Family offices are a relatively new addition to Africa's financial landscape, but they have the potential to become powerful drivers of economic growth. In this conversation with Theodore Albright, managing consultant at the Family Office Africa, we explore how these private wealth vehicles can move beyond philanthropy to fund African businesses, the importance of strong governance structures, and what it will take for family offices to scale their impact across the continent.
In essence, a family office is a resource to family businesses or family-owned businesses or business families, high net worth individuals, C-suite executives, and some SMEs. And the support normally comes in so many different flavors, but the critical areas are strategy, governance, tax, legal, leadership, financial planning, audit, compliance, and wealth management. Those are the sort of suite of services that your typical family office will provide. I must say that there are two main types of family offices. There is the single family office, which normally provides support to an individual and his or her family. So Bill Gates, Dangote, Oprah Winfrey will have their own family offices targeting and addressing their own need, including concierge services. Then you have the multi-family office, and there are two kinds of that too. There is the independent multi-family office, and then there is the collaborative multi-family office. And typically, the collaborative multi-family office is where you have a number of families, wealthy families or individuals coming together for support and consuming the resources that I've already mentioned. We at the Family Office Africa operate an independent family office. That means we are consumer and customer client agnostic. We take all comers who need support in the areas that I've outlined, so compliance, wealth management, tax, trust structures, onshore, offshore, legal transactions, strategy, leadership, and beyond. The ultimate objective of any family office is threefold. One is legacy, two is succession planning, and three is intergenerational wealth transfer. So although family offices have existed for about 600 years across the globe, in Africa, you're right to say that it's a very recent phenomenon. And I'll say that, in fact, multi-family offices are very few, far and between in terms of the continent of Africa.
So just speaking on how African family offices can play in innovation or just spur economic growth. First question, just briefly, do you think that we are at the scale, considering it's still relatively early, do you really think we are at the scale where we can demand that these family offices support economic development across the continent?
Undoubtedly, yes. And I'll tell you why. SMEs are the engine of growth across the world.
Yeah.
And by SMEs, I mean small and medium-sized enterprises across the world. The conglomerates are few and far between. So as a percentage of economic growth across the world, I would say that the economic activity represents about 65% and as high as 80% in some jurisdictions. So say Cuba and North Korea, pretty much all economies depend on small and medium-sized enterprises. Okay. And so those are the engines of growth wherever you go, whether it's Germany, America, Italy, or France, or for that matter, the United Kingdom. And when you look at the Far East as well, you can see Hyundai and Samsung. All of these are family businesses which have scaled. When you look at BMW, Mercedes, these are family businesses which again have scaled. And they have, in a sense, we no longer look at them as businesses which actually belong to families. So, as a starter for Africa, we definitely need to stoke and stimulate economies. And if we accept that SMEs are the engines of growth, then no matter how small or large in terms of scale compared to our Eastern or Western or Southern global Northern counterparts, the fact that we have started on this journey is critical. Are we at a point where we have the same scale as Nvidia or Apple or Walmart? No. But we must stimulate our economies. Granted that on the continent, the biggest spenders are governments. But we can't leave everything to government. And so this is where SMEs and family-owned businesses come in to support the drive and the agenda for accelerating economies on the continent. And how do they do that? They do that perhaps in three critical ways. One is running their own businesses, whatever it might be, whether it's a cement factory or an oil refinery. You know what I mean. Two is the adjacencies. Industry does not exist in a vacuum. All right. And so by setting up the businesses, you grow a whole ecosystem around it. And then three is direct or indirect investment into the businesses that we have within on the continent in the various countries. So the original businesses like Dangote will have the adjacencies, the businesses that live within the ecosystem that he has created, and then the further investments that may go into new and fledgling businesses. So, yes is the answer. I think that no scale is too small, and we need to start from the embryo and begin to grow the machine that will drive the agenda for Africa.
All right, so now let's look at capital and family offices as a source of capital. For the most part on the continent, we either have donor-led funding, we have funding from commercial banks, that's lending. And when you look at the tech space, we have largely venture capital and in just a few cases, private equity. But apart from these four major sources of funding, what unique advantage does a family office hold over all four?
The truth is that funding on the continent of Africa has always been a thorny issue. And when you individualize it, and I look across the continent, I look at different countries from which we operate, the feedback is always the same: seed capital or capital to commence. But I have to say that we, as family offices, some and very few are venturing into, like you said, venture capital or private equity, or coming alongside for joint venture projects. In the main, what I see is the funding, the cycle of funding being reintroduced into the ecosystem of the family. So you have families who have liquidity and that they use that liquidity either to buy in expertise or set up adjacent businesses. So in the ecosystem, you might even have a VC fund for funding members, either direct or indirect members of families for businesses. But I have to be honest and say, it is not often or frequent that you find the money or the funds leaking out of this ecosystem into setting up externals like angel investing. Far from it. For the most part, the funding remains within the ecosystem, and if investment is to be made, then it is either in the form of joint venturing or acquisition, but not to say that I'm giving you, doling out funds as an impact investor or venture capitalist, not outside of the ecosystem.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest problem with this? Why are they not doing a lot of investments outside their ecosystem?
Opportunity cost. Simply put,
Okay.
funding and cash will go where it is most appreciated. Simply put. So if I am a funder and I have a pot of 100 million, I will look at where I can optimize and maximize my returns. Maximizing my return without optimizing is dangerous because it means that I'm going for profit maximization, but I've not taken account of the risk. So the optimization then takes account of the potential risk involved in going outside of the ecosystem. That is number one. Number two, the bride, that is the potential business, quite often is not ready in terms of governance to accept the new funding. I work for clients who, in some instance, would wish to go out and put funding into organizations. But the question is, what are the stakes from a governance perspective of those institutions? And so often my first advice to organizations or companies or entities seeking funding is to get your house in order, which means that the governance structures must be put in place. What do I mean by that? At the ownership level, we need to be very clear what is expected. At the control level, here, this is the board level. Do we have a board? Do we have independence at the board? Do we have meeting rhythms? And so on. And then at the management level, we're looking at processes and policies. Are those in place? Are those adhered to? And so that comfort is what is needed for funding to be able to flow. So I am maximizing, but I'm also optimizing by looking at my opportunity cost. Where can I optimize and maximize my returns? But I don't want to do that by getting my fingers burnt. And so governance then becomes a critical tool for preparing the bride to accept the bridegroom who is going to fund you.
I mean, you raised some really important points there with how governance or the lack of it is basically hindering these family offices from doing investments. But it also raises another question for me. Considering governance is such a thorny issue for them and something that they want to guard against, what role can they play, or are they already playing, in bridging this governance gap? Because this is a problem. One, because a lot of African businesses aren't formalized, so they're just, I mean, if you're informal, you probably do not have the governance in place. So what role are these family offices taking to ensure that there's some level of governance, even if it's not as as great as they would like it, what role are they playing to ensure there's some level of governance in these businesses?
I think it is important that we set the scene. Family offices are not charities, okay? Invariably, they're in for significance, they're in for impact, they're in for legacy, okay? And so there's a limit to what a family office can and will do to support businesses that are interested in growing and in ensuring that they have the proper governance structures in place. I take us, the Family Office Africa. There is hardly a month where we don't offer free, and I mean free, webinars to associations of businesses. So, Institute of Directors, Chartered Institute of Marketing, Association of Corporate Council, and other compliance organizations to support them in putting in the structures. And we do that from a very selfish perspective. Why? Because when the governance structures are put in place, it means that we will have, in terms of our pipeline of clients, better clients for whom we can now make introductions. So that is number one. But number two, because we live in the ecosystem, it means that we have a buoyant economy. So what we then drive is a virtuous cycle of businesses getting their acts together, businesses being more favorable for the receipt of funding, businesses now striving and thriving within the economic ecosystem. Recently, we held a summit with the IFC, the arm of the World Bank, where we brought together family businesses and spoke on the issue of governance and how to put in structures. Last month, we held the Africa Family Business Summit here in Accra, again with the view to driving the conversation around structure, around governance, around systems and processes. So it isn't that we are not doing, but I have to say that the businesses have to take responsibility for their own governance. So we create awareness for sure. We offer assistance, no doubt, but ultimately the businesses need to be proactive if they want to scale and they want to grow.
So, what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see for African family offices that want to help spur economic development?
I think that I take Africa as a virgin forest. And I think that Africa is at an inflection point. If we take the right steps, in the next 10 years, we should see an economic boom that like never before. It means that family businesses can intervene, step in, and take the lead in the direction of travel for the continent. We are resource rich in natural resources, but in terms of expertise, we seem to lag behind. And therefore, the value add is not there. Let me give you a few instances. Between Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Ghana, we probably supply 70% of all the cocoa on the planet. How is it that we are not going the next step to forward integrate by adding value to the cocoa bean? Rather, we are exporting the bean raw. We are exporting the bean raw. Straight away, I see an opportunity to add value to the bean in terms of its journey to the chocolate bar. That is a classic example. We should not have 80% of the cocoa beans leaving the shores of Africa to be processed elsewhere. Why is it that it is taking one businessman to craft and build an oil refinery in an oil-producing country? Where is the value add? So the opportunities are in the value addition to the natural resources that are abundant on the continent of Africa. When you add on to that the Africa Free Continental Trade, you have a unique mix of opportunity on the continent of Africa for the dynamo of business to be generated and to be accelerated.
We are wrapping it up now with the last question. So over the next decade, what role do you envision for family offices in Africa?
3 critical roles. Remember, family offices are built for intergenerational wealth transfer and succession planning. In Africa, like other parts of the world, we are plagued with the perennial curse of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. The first generation makes the money, the second generation saves the money, the third generation squanders the money. By setting up the family offices, you no longer have to reinvent the wheel by going back to base station. It means that you have continuity in the business environment and you have growth. And so we can see second, third, fourth, 10th generation businesses. And as they grow, quite often so they scale, because they have family businesses and family-owned businesses have a unique point of view, which is they invest for the long term and they're willing to take greater risks. So that is number one. We create a virtuous cycle and we don't go to boom and bust of after the first generation, the founder dies and that is the end. That is number one. Number two, family offices then become a beacon of inspiration and knowledge transfer, as well as creating ecosystems within which adjacencies can develop and grow. Dangote has a cement factory, Dangote has an oil refinery. And so the adjacencies around that means that new skills and new education insights, knowledge, and expertise is developed and accelerated. And then the last bit is that with the acceleration of the family offices, you will now have liquidity with which to look at the value additions that it can bring on the continent of Africa, as in going the next step on oil refinery, going the next step on gold smelting, going the next step on cocoa processing, going the next step in agribusiness, in the mining sector, in the telecom sector. So ours is a wonderful opportunity for us to behold. The mix then, the special sauce of the Africa Free Trade, if it comes to fruition and is taken seriously, will make Africa the powerhouse that it has always had the potential to be, but it's only now realizing its potential dream.